Hey, my name's Chris Larsen. I am the pastor of spiritual development, and it is my joy and privilege to welcome you guys here again today, to add my welcome to all the welcomes that have already been given to you. We are continuing on with our series called Text Messages, and the idea behind the series is that you guys text in your ideas for what you would like for us to talk about. You text in or email in what you desire for us to communicate with you over the next several weeks. And so last week we talked about the Holy Spirit. We answered a few of the texts on there. And this week we move into a different arena. But first, how many of y'all actually have cell phones here in the room? Actual cell phone owners? Okay. How many of y'all have AT&T as your provider? AT&T people? Okay, great. How many of y'all switched to AT&T whenever the iPhone came out? Anybody? Yeah, isn't that so weak? Isn't it? Don't you feel like you're almost cheap because you did that? But okay, how many of y'all are singular? English singular? One of you? Good. That worked out well. Well, it is the same thing. That's right. They moved. Good call. I was testing you. Okay, how about Sprint? Any Sprint people? Good. Verizon? And T-Mobile. How about T-Mobile? All right. And there's like dozens of cell phone companies out there now. And so it's interesting whenever you look at the reasons why we choose a cell phone provider. Interestingly enough, it's not necessarily just because of the quality of service that we get. A lot of times we'll choose a cell phone provider simply because of the fact that it actually gives us the maximum amount of coverage that we want. As a matter of fact, I switched providers because of the fact that I was driving down a road one day and my cell phone just went out, just kept on going out. And my friend who was in the car next to me, he just pulled his out and said, hey, you can use mine. And so it's very frustrating because it's like, man, I want to be out in the middle of the boonies and be able to make a call if I need to. And so sometimes we switch based upon how much coverage that we get. Other times we'll switch based upon the packages. What do I get out of this? Do I get a free phone? Does your cell phone providing service, does that actually work with the phone that I want, the phone that I'm really desiring? Sometimes we choose our cell phone provider simply based upon how much it costs. Because if I can get out for as little money as possible, then this is the company that I'm going to go with. Anybody haggle with people who are cell phone providers, just trying to figure out how you get more stuff for less money? Any of y'all hagglers in here? I tend not to be a haggler. I tend to be more of a, well, that's the best you can do? Okay. And I'll take it, you know. But, you know, people who haggle, man, just keep it up. Good job. Unfortunately, there's a lot of times where we apply these same basic principles to our relationship with God. There's a lot of times where we will apply the same understanding. I mean, for the majority of us, we understand that God is a provider. In fact, when we read throughout the Scriptures, we find passages that are comforting to us because we know that He is a provider. And unfortunately, there are times, even in my own personal life, where if I'm not careful, I will base my decision upon who God is and where I choose to walk and follow Him based upon some of these same criteria. What's the coverage area? How far to the margins can I go and still be covered? How far can I extend out the grace of God? How far can I push it to the limit, to the edge, and still be covered by God's grace? Some of us tend to choose God as a provider based upon what He provides for us. What does He give us? What's in it for me? God, I got a prayer list about this long, and if you hit like at least, 7 out of 10 of these, then we're good. But as soon as you mess up, as soon as you fall below that 70% mark or 60% or whatever it is that maybe I even haven't pre-qualified in my mind, but once you move below that line, all of a sudden I start to doubt you, and I start to mistrust you as my provider, and I start to look for other ways and other means to find my provision. Some of us will choose whether or not we're going to follow Jesus based upon the fact that, how much is it going to cost me? Really, I'm willing to pursue this Jesus thing just so long as it doesn't cost me very much. It's just so long as I don't have to invest too much into this thing. And as soon as Jesus starts impeding upon my time, upon my schedule, and upon my pocketbook, I may be out. And so it's interesting that when we come to these next two text message questions that we're going to tackle this morning, we need to get a bigger perspective of who God is as our provider. whenever I came across this first one, it was pretty interesting because we've had a lot of different text messages come in, and this one right here really just kind of stood out to me because initially it just seemed like it was, who really cares about this one? Here's the question. It says, why did God make the universe and space so big? Seems like a lot of space, and just like our body's nature and even the internet, everything is interconnected. And I came across that, and it's like, I don't know. Who knows? I mean, I wasn't there when it was made. I don't know what was in the mind and heart of God whenever He decided to make the universe as big as it is. And so I just kind of blew it off because I figured, man, there's much more important questions out there, I'm sure, than why is the universe so big? I mean, that just seems so ambiguous of a question. I don't know why we necessarily need to spend time on that. And then as I started thinking through that and kept coming back to it, it really started to intrigue me because the question is much larger than just a simple explain all the emptiness and vastness of space question. The question is much bigger than that. The question is, really, when it comes down to it, okay, God's provider, what's the point? Why is He providing all of this space out there? What is His intentions and His purposes and His plans? Because for a lot of people who are not following Jesus, who maybe have a stumbling block in their life about why they choose not to follow Jesus, this space issue is a pretty big question. Why in the world would God, if there is a God out there, why would He make a universe so big? It's just a lot of wasted space. I mean, we're talking about conservative estimates, tens of billions of light years across this universe. Hundreds of billions of stars in our galaxy alone. In fact, in the universe, I mean, they're talking potentially estimates of billions and billions of stars. And seriously, if you think about it, if it's just so that whenever we go out at night, we can have a pretty view of the sky, that's a lot of wasted space. So, while I don't know all the answers, I don't know all the purposes and all the intentions in the heart and the mind of God whenever He created the universe, I do know a couple things. I do know from a scientific standpoint that the universe really couldn't be much larger or much smaller and be able to sustain life, just scientifically. Atheists, everybody across the board scientifically would suggest and agree with that. I know from a mathematical standpoint that whenever we're talking about fixtures and points in the sky, and we're talking about trying to figure out where the points in the sky actually are, and the North Star, particularly Polaris, I mean, it's got to be a pretty long ways away in order for us to be able to determine that to be the North Star, that we can affix a lot of our direction based upon that. And I know that based upon the Scriptures that God created everything that exists. In fact, in Genesis chapter 1, verses 14 through 18, it says, God said, "Let there be light in the expanse of the sky to separate the day from night, and let them serve as signs to mark seasons and days and years. And let them be lights, and let there be lights in the expanse of the sky to give light on the earth." And it was so. And God made two great lights, the greater light to govern the day, and the lesser light to govern the night. And He also made the stars. God set them in the expanse of the sky to give light on the earth and to govern the day and the night and to separate light from darkness. And God saw that it was good. And so we read in the Scripture that God even knows each of the names of the stars, and where we refer to stars now as just, CV 2385 and all these various numbers and nomenclatures for the stars, that God actually has a name for every star that exists out there. And for His purposes and for His intentions, we know that He created everything. But again, our struggle, if we're not careful, is that we'll make this universe and the vastness of it all about us. Because if we're the center point, if we're the focal point of the universe, then yes, there is a problem. There's a lot of wasted space out there. Give us a planet, give us a moon, and give us a sun, and that's all we need, really, when you think about it. But if we're not the center point, if we're not the focal point of what God is doing here, then maybe we need to understand that the vastness of the universe could possibly explain a little bit more about who God is than about who we are.